Think about the last time something really big happened at your company. A deal that is almost closed but not, or maybe a restructure that hasn't been announced yet. Maybe a number didn't land where it needed to or where you thought it was going to. And where did the real conversation about that happen? I'd put money on it that it wasn't at the all hands meeting that you planned when you planned to tell everybody. It was on Slack or Microsoft Teams. It was by the water cooler, as they say, in the lunchroom, in the hall, maybe even in the parking lot. There was a side, couples of different side text message conversations about it, and the meeting after the meeting, as they say. So when you go silent during a period of uncertainty, here's what shapes what comes next. Most of us were taught as leaders to wait. We don't want to protect the teams and we don't want to share too soon. We don't want to create panic and we want to protect our teams. So we end up holding our breaths until we have the clean, perfect answer. We're often aiming for perfection. And while we wait, there is damage being done in our organizations that we don't see. Today, we're flipping that instinct on its head. We're talking about three important things that get better when you communicate with your teams sooner. Said another way, it's things that settle down once you get your messaging out way sooner than you're used to. I'm Sarah Wilson, a fractional COO and turnaround partner for SMB. I help businesses struggling with their operational core and challenges within their business. I work with founders to install scalable, repeatable processes that unlock the ability for growth with the teams and tools they already have.
And I'm Penny Cook. I'm also a fractional COO and strategic operations consultant, helping product and consumer brands install, upgrade, and run scalable operations and operational systems that reflect the founder's unique vision and ambition. Sarah, thank you so much for bringing this topic up. These subtle cues from leadership in communication, especially on operations teams, have everything to do with how successful these teams can be and how settled people are in being able to execute their mission in operations. So let's start with the thing that scares leaders most about speaking before they're ready. The fear that the second we open our mouths without a clean answer, we lose control of the narrative.
I want to acknowledge that that fear is very real and that Penny and I, as leaders, completely understand that that exists in ourselves. We've sat in that seat ourselves. So we're not flippantly dismissing it, but we really want to make the case about how to address this.
That's so true, which, Sarah, is the first key we want to address, which is rumor. What fills a vacuum when you don't say anything? Everyone's going to speculate. Everyone wants to know where they stand. And here's what I'd say to that fear that leaders have when they don't want to say anything until they have the full story. You don't necessarily lose control of the narrative by talking. You lose control of the narrative by going silent. Information hates a vacuum, and when you don't hand people a story, they won't sit patiently and wait to find out. They will write that story. And the version they write is probably worse than the truth and can send your teams off in the wrong direction. So as a leader, I also want to acknowledge not only is this, it's scary, and this is potentially a problem for you in leadership, but it comes from a place of wanting to do the right thing for your teams, right? The leader thinks they're protecting everyone by holding back until they really know more and can give people certainty. But it's not the certainty they're looking for. It is, where are we in the journey and how does that affect me? What should I be doing? So addressing people where they're going to hear it, I think, is part of the game of retaining control of the narrative and also retaining control of where your operations team needs to be operating during this time.
Penny, you're so right. The desire to hold back really feeds that rumor mill. And those rumors that get started and subsequently you have to work to eliminate and work with your teams to then tell the truth, that message that you were holding on to gets quite diluted by the end of that cycle. So it's better to have communicated sooner and is really saving you that hard work at the end.
Yeah. I think the move here is super simple for leaders. 3 sentences. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know yet. And here's what I expect. You can tell them when you expect to know more. You could tell them what you expect to do while we're learning more. That's it. You'd be amazed at how much that really quiets down the rumor mill. And it gives your operations teams the sense that you understand where they are and we're all on this journey together. You're including them in part of the journey, and that is incredibly empowering to the teams
Yeah.
that you're talking to.
Absolutely. And that is a great framework that brings us a key point of number two, being honest and vulnerable about what is known and what's still unknown. Think about maybe the old school way of leadership where we held ourselves to maybe a higher standard. We kind of had to be perfect. We had to absorb everything and we had to carry it all on our shoulders. Whereas the second key here that we make a case for is to understand that the impact on you as a leader is potentially burnout if you take that information and carry it alone. Those three keys that you just mentioned there, Penny, really help us frame how we're going to communicate. And when we do that sharing with our teams, that allows them to stand with you with whatever it is. Because often whatever's changing or whatever the communication is, it's not typically maybe good news, a good news story. Sometimes it is. More often than not, what we're working to communicate about is means change or challenge or frustration or loss of some kind. So with that in mind, by being honest and straightforward about what's known versus what's unknown, you have that opportunity to share that burden. And you also, in your leadership practice, get to be really intentional and authentic. You get to show up as your authentic self. You're just as human as everyone else. And whatever it is, like it shouldn't be up to you as the leader to carry that alone. That's why we have teams. And that's why we, as a team, look out for each other.
Yeah, that's right. I think that this concept is um, is something that leaders really need to look out for. That burnout is real, and the leader in the place where they are is getting it from both ends, right? They have pressure from their own leadership above them, and they also have pressure from the team. And when there's uncertainty and there is concern, and this, like to your point, Sarah, it's usually around something unexpected that happened and unexpected in potentially a negative way that has to be communicated, solved, worked through. And the leader sits in the middle of all of that and holding on to too much information and trying to control too much around them can really lead to leadership burnout, which is something that also leads to not making the best decisions in cases.
Yes. And the team members that watch you be open and honest about what's going on and how you're feeling and you're showing that it is okay to feel, to share, to your reaction is going to actually have a huge impact on how the team feels that they can react and how honest they're going to be with you. How they're going to move through the change relies very heavily on the leader, and sharing early really helps that leader with the burden as well.
Yep, Sarah, it's such a good point. That sharing really helps, and articulating where we are in the process really helps. It's going to help your own burnout. It's going to help your team's understanding, and it's going to help you retain the process forward. We've talked about retaining the narrative. We need to retain the support from our team, and we need to keep our operation on schedule. In operations teams, we don't have a lot of slip time. We can't stop working. If we stop working, our company stops cranking out what it is that we provide. So we need to keep things on schedule. And we've all seen that go sideways for different reasons. And you used the water cooler example when we opened up the episode. And I love that because around the water cooler, in the kitchen, on Zoom, casually, or in Slack, whatever you're using, there are always exchanges with people, and there's going to be exchanges of information that goes a little bit beyond business. How are you feeling? What's going on? And uncertainty can really pile upon itself in an organization. And that's not what you want your team talking about behind the scenes. You want them to be energized and creative, and you want them to understand how to move forward also. So what is your expectation? And that's a good lead in to key number 3 here, which is when we reach decision paralysis and you name the ambiguity, it frees people up to be able to move forward or to articulate what the opportunities are to move forward if we have opportunities to move down different paths. So sitting in ambiguity is the one that costs you output. It's kind of the sneakiest one here because it doesn't look like anything. It just looks like maybe things are slowing down, but the cause of why they're slowing down is the thing that we can remedy before it brings things to a grinding halt, right? When nobody knows what's solid and still in flux, people will stop. People won't make the right decisions, and you're going to start to see things get late, or you're going to start to see things look wrong. You're going to see your metrics start to look off because people are smart and they're picking up these signals, but they may not be safe to say things about them or to ask the right questions. And nobody wants to make a call that's going to get reversed in a week. Nobody wants to put their name on that. People want a little bit more certainty. So how can you create that environment for people in the middle of ambiguity, in the middle of tough situations where your operations still needs to be moving forward? They still need to be making product. They still need to be forecasting. They still need to be cutting POs, right? They still need to be producing reports. And now the sand is shifting under their feet. How can you help them articulate where they are and give them a path to move
And
forward in the face of that?
absolutely. To build on the last point too, is not carrying the load yourself as a leader. This really also plays into this decision paralysis. By communicating early of what's known and not known, you have an opportunity to share the weight of not just what's getting communicated, but also what needs to happen to move forward. So you might, by communicating open and early, not only are you sharing the load with the team, but you're also sharing the ability to make those important calls. You might find that somebody on your team might have a really great way to move forward. They might have a fantastic, like, we should do this. If you haven't shared everything and you're keeping it close, the responsibility is kind of on you and you only to make the right decision. And maybe you're not the right one in that case.
Yeah, I have a great example to share of that. I worked with a company where we had a manufacturing facility and the owners were considering moving that manufacturing facility. And that manufacturing facility would go under a sub and not under our direct control. But there was a lot of work that needed to be done, and they hadn't even decided 100% they were going to do that. And the fact that these discussions were being had was leaked to the people on the manufacturing floor. And all of a sudden, there was all kinds of chirping behind the scenes. People were discontent. We're seeing quality go down. We're seeing output go down because there were more conversations in the background. People were discontented. And a few people decided to leave in the midst of that because they didn't like the uncertainty and they felt like they weren't being dealt with honestly by the management. So what we did in the face of all that, because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know, was it going to move? When was it going to move? What decisions were being made? And one thing that they didn't know was what we were working on in the background was if it was going to move, we were going to move all of their jobs with it because these people knew how to create this and that was not going to go away. And so the most that was going to change for these folks was their commute a little bit, and it wasn't even very far away. But nobody was talking to them about it, and the fact that a little bit was leaked created chaos in the organization. And so we sent in a leader, not somebody who was a director or manager, somebody who everyone looked to really like keep their feet on the ground. And he was able to say to the team, look, there's some uncertainty here. There's a chance we could move. There's a chance we couldn't. But here's what we have right now. We all have these jobs. We know that our management is going to protect our jobs going forward. And the worst thing that we can do right now is stop doing our jobs, because that will then we can't protect our jobs, right? So everyone needs to buckle down, do this thing. It's not going away. We're a team. We're going to stay a team, and kind of put words around what was happening, gave people comfort that it was being considered, and we were able to get back on track, such that when the facility did move, everything was expected and we were able to actually talk to that directly in a way that didn't surprise them, in a way that was really consistent with how the information was presented. But in the absence of doing that, lots of cracks would have formed, and it may have actually kept the deal from going through because people were stopping performing their jobs correctly.
I love that example. And when you talk about chaos ensuing, that's absolutely what happens. People's emotions get high, and the water cooler and the Slack messages, and everything's on fire, and it feels like it's on fire, and a whole bunch of stress that's not necessarily needed. So,
Right.
great
And we don't
example.
discount the importance of people's livelihoods
Yes,
in these
exactly.
organizations that we run.
Exactly. So let's pull this together. Three things that get worse the longer you wait for the most perfect answer. The more you can settle this is key here. And the conversation the first time you do it may feel awkward when your habit is to wait for perfection. So we recognize that and just want to say that this is a practice we encourage, because the three things, just to recap: rumors settle because you've really taken away that space that people will fill in. They'll fill it in for you with the information that they don't have. So that's the first. And then of course, burnout settles. And whose burnout? Your burnout. Your burnout will settle and potentially not even arrive when you have that opportunity as the leader to communicate about what's happening and share that load with your team. And then finally, decision paralysis. So decision paralysis settles when you communicate early and transparently. Let's make sure that your business keeps moving in the right direction and that we're not all sitting around wondering what's going to happen. So, what does good look like? Of course, naming what you don't know, holding the weight together instead of alone, and then, of course, drawing the line between what's settled and what's still moving. Be very clear about that.
Yeah, and
It
the
is
real
okay.
power, I think, Sarah, in what you've brought up isn't in just doing that one time, but in making it part of your leadership practice.
Yes,
Admit to yourself what you know and what you don't know, how it's affecting you, how it's affecting your team, and be the leader that articulates that. Your team will come to expect that from you, and they will also come to trust you.
yes, I love that. I love that you use the leadership practice. I love that word. You've probably heard me say it a lot of times too, is when we work on ourselves as leaders, that work is never really done. And I like the word practice because it's something that we continue to work at. So if today's episode gave you something useful, we'd love you to subscribe wherever you listen. It's the best way to make sure that you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know another leader who could use this conversation, share it with them. This show grows when you help us find people that it's built for. If you're working through this or anything else like it, or need a thought partner, reach out to us directly. You can find us on our website at operatingonpurpose.com, and we'd love to talk, because great businesses don't just happen, they operate on purpose.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
Thank
listening. Sarah,
you.
thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
See you next
Talk next
time.
time.